thank you very much again for joining with us. I'll look forward to your questions. We should start with some introductions. My name is Matthew Orr. I'm the owner and founder of VoIPTools and chief architect for all of our applications. Hopefully my audio is loud enough for you to hear me. We also have here with us Adam. Yes, you'll note he has the same last name. He is my eldest son and is the director of sales and marketing for VoIPTools. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about a number of tools. Most of these tools are pretty simple, so they'll only take a couple of minutes to go over. They aren't big enough to justify their own webinar, so we're going to go through these tools fairly quickly. First tool we're going to look at is agent greeting, then audio scheduler, auto callback, auto logout, auto self ID, do not call, Queue Notifier, and recording beep. So I should mention that I am in rural England right now. We're kind of traveling around, my wife and I, and my internet here is less than ideal. So we may have some audio issues here, but I'm traveling for the next 3 months, and so we're just going to have to deal with the audio as best we can. So the first application that we're going to talk about today is agent greeting. And this tool has a number of benefits and purposes, but it's basically there to play an automated message when an agent answers a queue call. And so one of the purposes of this tool is to make sure that any regulatory boilerplate information, general greeting, all of those things get handled automatically. And that has some benefits for the agent. One of the things is that it kind of reduces that wear and tear on their voice, because you can imagine if you're answering hundreds of calls a day and every single time you're saying, hello, this is Matthew, you've reached VoIPTools technical support, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, all these legal regulatory stuff you should be aware of. It wears on your voice in time. In fact, usually I get about a third of the way through these demos, and then I start wondering if I'm going to make it all the way through, because it's hard on your voice to be talking all day. The other thing too is that it can be a bit tedious. Saying the same thing over and over again. So it'll make this a little easier for the agents to do this all day long. It also means that they have the opportunity to record the message and do it several times until they get that message just right. And I should mention that when that agent answers the phone, he can hear the greeting as well as the caller can hear the greeting at the same time. So everybody knows what's going on. The agent can hear it. And it is recorded in the agent that's answering the call's voice. So in the perfect world, the customer would never even know that he wasn't actually speaking and that it was a pre-recorded message. The last thing is that if you have an agent that is supporting multiple queues, maybe they work in the customer service queue and the technical support queue, by eliminating the need for them to say the initial greeting when they answer the phone, it ensures that they say the right message depending on where that call is coming to the agent. All right, with that, we should probably jump in and take a look at what agent greeting is all about. And let's see if I can do that. So I have here a desktop, and on this desktop are all of the applications that we're going to be looking at today. This is on Amazon Light Sale. So one of the things you can take away from this is that, yeah, you can run 3CX on one server and all of our tools on another server, and they can talk to each other and do their thing. All right, so agent greeting. Let's jump in here and take a look at this guy. It's a web application, so you can make this available to any one of your staff from anywhere, or you can not. It's up to you. You log in with your 3CX extension and your voicemail pin. Some of our tools will allow you to use alternate passwords like your web password or your phone password. This one, I think we're just using the voicemail pin. And one of the things you should note right off the bat, it says connecting to 3CX. We're very, very tightly integrated in with 3CX. So when I put in my username, my extension number and voicemail pin, we sent those credentials over secure connection, and 3CX validated my credentials. And if I had put in the wrong thing, it would come back with an error message, something to the effect that the username or password doesn't match, and you wouldn't be able to get in. The other thing that we should note is that it knows who I am now. So when I record a prompt for my introductory message for a queue, I don't have to tell it who I am at this point. It already knows. So you'll see here that for Q8007, I have given it a file name, and this file name was uploaded from a list of file names. I have specified the IVR that this prompt is associated with, and I've activated it. So I can play that audio file right here. So I can listen to the audio file, make sure that I've associated the right audio file with the right queue. If I need to record a new message, I'll click on here. And what that does is, because it knows who I am, it will call my 3CX phone and prompt me to record the message. And then if I decide at some point that I don't need this, or I want to replace it with a different one, I can delete them all from right here. So each agent can have their own prompt for as many queues as they participate in. And this is the last they have to deal with it. Everything else just happens automatically. Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is Audio Scheduler. And the purpose of Audio Scheduler is to play automated messages, typically over an overhead paging system. So some use cases could be, for example, the school bells for recess and the start of school and the end of school, that kind of stuff. Shift changes at a manufacturing facility. So typically they'll blow a big horn that says, okay, all you manufacturing guys, it's time for the break or time for shift change, those kinds of things. Maybe something like airport announcements. The yellow zone is for loading and unloading, or don't take packages from people you don't know, those kinds of things. These are just automated messages that just happen on a scheduled basis. Store closings might be another example. So we're finding that 3CX partners and customers are finding all kinds of different uses for this tool. So let me show you how this works. So let's pull up Audio Scheduler. This is one of the few applications that we have that is still a Windows application. We're in the process of converting all of our tools over to be web applications, because we're now offering hosting services to our VoIPTools customers. If you don't want to host it yourself, we'll happily spin up a VM for you on Amazon, and administer all these tools for you. So we'll do the installs, the updates, monitor the CPU and disk and memory utilization, and do the Windows patches and all those things for you. And it just happens. And we do monitor all this stuff in real time. So you'll notice there's a little agent here. This is a backup agent that pushes all of the backups up to another cloud service. So backups are also included. And then we have another agent that runs in the background that monitors the CPU and all of those kinds of things. And that goes to a central console. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Audio Scheduler. So perhaps the most instructive thing to do would be to take a look at an existing one. So I'm going to edit this one here, and let's take a look. What should become apparent to those who have spent much time working with Windows is that this is a scheduled task. So we're using the Windows scheduled task feature to execute an action at a specific time. So you can go in here and you can set triggers for when do I want this to run? Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, every 15 minutes, whatever you want. It's a very flexible tool that's part of Windows. And what this does is it runs a little executable that we created. And this little executable only has two parameters. What's the extension number that I'm going to dial? And what is the WAV file that I'm going to play? This other one is for logging stuff. But that's pretty much it. And the beauty of this application is because this is a scheduled task, it's built into Windows, it's been used for 30, 40 years. It has had millions of people testing it. It's rock solid. This thing just works. It always works. And it's kind of a set it and forget it thing, and you never have to deal with it again. So this tool is actually nothing more than a wizard to set up all of the necessary settings to make this happen. So you can upload your own recordings. In fact, you have to upload your own recordings. So it says whatever you want. You know, loading zone is only for loading and unloading, and you'll get towed. Those kinds of things, right? So again, schools, airports, stores, manufacturing facilities, these are all potential use cases for setting up Audio Scheduler. It can use text to speech. It can do, this is where you upload files. This is where you specify the dial code in 3CX if you want to have it auto answer the calls. So we can page paging ring groups. We can page overhead paging systems. We can call an individual extension. That's up to you. There's a lot of flexibility in how this works, but that's basically what this guy does. Plays automated messages at the scheduled times. You set the schedule and then you just let it go. All right, so auto callback. This is another one of those tools. It's in many phone systems, this is a common feature. The idea here is that I call one of my colleagues on their extension, and either they don't answer the phone, or it goes to voicemail, or I get a busy signal, something like that, right? Where it wasn't able to complete the call because maybe that person has their presence set to something other than available, or they're already on the phone. So this has a couple of benefits. It eliminates the need for me to constantly keep checking, is that person that I need to communicate with off the phone now? So that can be pretty tedious. I really urgently need to get a hold of this person, and I want to make sure that as soon as they're off the phone, I call them back. So it eliminates that need for me to monitor it. It ensures that as soon as that person is off the phone or has changed their presence back to available, that I call them. Now, how does this happen? I guess we could talk a little bit about what the criteria is for this callback to take place. First, the person to whom I am calling must have their presence set to available. They must have a phone that is registered. They must not already be on the phone. Conversely, I also have to be available, have a phone registered, and not be on the phone. So as soon as the system sees that both of us are available, then it will initiate a call back to that person. And with any luck, we get that call established as quickly as possible. This is an opt-in feature. So on any extension, you can configure it, and I'll show you how to configure it, and it'll become clear what I mean when I say that this is an opt-in feature. But basically, you set it up, and so if somebody doesn't want this feature where people can just instantly call them back as soon as they hang up the phone, they don't have to configure it. All right, so this does monitor both the phone status and their 3CX presence status. Okay, so let's try doing a demo of 3CX auto callback. All right, so we'll close this guy and 3CX auto callback. Now, there isn't a whole lot to do on this side. Most of the work is done at the extension level. Again, logging in with my username and password, extension and PIN. Splint on my finger from playing football with my sons, and I'm a little bit slow. All right, so there's just a couple of settings. If we can get this guy to go over there, come on. And that is, how long do I wait for the two extensions to become available? Because I don't want to request a callback on Monday, and if that person was on vacation and it set their presence to away, I don't want to have it automatically call them back 3 days later. That's probably a little too late. So you specify the maximum length of time that we're going to monitor those two extensions for availability. So you set it to whatever you want. It's in minutes. So you could set it for an hour if you wanted, or 3 hours, or 15 seconds. No, I guess it's just in minutes. So you can't do seconds. Yeah. The other thing too is that we don't want to overwhelm your VoIPTools server or your 3CX server by constantly poking that extension. Are you available? Is your phone registered? Are you currently on the phone? Because if you have 1,000 extensions and 50 people that are waiting for a callback, that's a lot of poking of the 3CX API. So better to just wait a reasonable amount of time before you check again, so that we don't unduly burden the 3CX server with these queries. So that's what those two settings are about. But how do I opt in for this capability? So let's jump over here and take a look at the phone system and see if I can't show you how that works. There we go. All right, so we go to users. Oh, wait, let me show you another thing here. When I installed Auto Callback, one of the things that the installer did is it created a call flow designer application, and that application's name is Callback. So now when I go to an extension and I go to Matthew and I go to forwarding rules, let's say that whenever I would normally send a call to a voicemail box, instead, we're going to send it to that call flow designer application. So if my status is available, but I don't answer within 20 seconds, then instead of forwarding it to voicemail, I'm going to forward it to a number, and I'm going to set the value to callback. Okay. And by doing this, what this means is that when a call comes in and it rings at my extension and I don't answer it for 20 seconds, it's going to forward that call to the call flow designer application. And that call flow designer application is going to ask, do you want to leave a voicemail? Or would you like to request an auto callback? And if they choose auto callback, that's when auto callback starts monitoring the two extensions and will place the call when it determines that both are available. So you set the criteria under which it happens. Do you want to do this? Obviously, it's not applicable to external callers because I have no way of checking, does some guy's cell phone, is it available? So this is all about extension to extension calls. So that's usually why we're looking at internal calls for this purpose. You wouldn't want to do that for external calls because that doesn't apply. All right. So it's pretty simple to set up. You just go in, you set the criteria under which you want to do it, typically for an internal, well, always for internal calls, and then you just put callback in the name of that field. So if I don't want to give people that option for my extension, I don't set it up. If I do want to do it, then I do. And so that's basically how this thing works. Okay, auto logout. This guy has gone through a number of iterations over its lifetime. Um, we keep getting more and more requests to add features to this guy. So you'll see pretty quickly that this guy is a very feature-rich tool. Unlike some of these other tools that are just quick and dirty, you set a couple settings and you're on your way. This one gives you a lot of flexibility. So what do we use Auto Logout for? Well, this tool, what it basically does is it looks at um, um, your SLA, and if an agent misses consecutive telephone calls, we make the assumption that they're no longer at their desk. Maybe they got up for lunch and they forgot to log out of queues, whatever the reason is. Um, for whatever reason, they're not at their desk answering telephone calls. And we don't want customers sitting in a queue waiting for somebody to help them while the queue is ringing an agent's extension who isn't even there. So by making sure that we automatically log these agents out of the queue, then we ensure that customers get assistance as quickly as possible. It also helps to reduce the noise in a call center. If you've ever worked in a call center where it's a cube farm with a whole bunch of agents, the last thing we want is a bunch of ringing going on. So by ensuring that it's not sitting there ringing a phone that no agent is sitting at, we kind of reduce some of the clutter that's going on in the work area. One of the other things that Auto Logout does is when it determines that an agent has left their desk, it notifies both the agent and their manager that somebody's been logged out due to inactivity. And that may be a flag, a warning flag to the manager that I have fewer people answering calls than I thought I did. And maybe it's time to take a look at how many people are servicing the queue, how many callers are in the queue, what's the longest wait time, those kinds of questions. So it also lets managers keep track of when somebody's leaving their desk on an unscheduled basis. Um, the last thing is that when you have calls that are ringing at an extension where there's nobody there, it increases the statistics of longest hold time, average wait time, time to answer, those kinds of things, right? And so it messes up the 3CX statistics. So this tool makes it easier for you to kind of ensure that those kind of things don't happen. All right, so let's take a look at that tool. This is where you specify the number of calls, a number of rings. No, it is the number of calls that an agent missed. So you might say, oh, he might miss one because he was busy with putting files away in a file cabinet or something like that. But if he misses two in a row, then I'm going to assume that he's not at his desk, and I'm going to automatically log him out. The other thing too is that how long do we keep track of how many calls he's missed? We certainly don't want him to miss a call at 11 o'clock at night, and then now we've gone into the next day, and those calls he missed the previous day are getting counted against him in the new day. So the default is at midnight. We'll reset all those counters back to 0. And then the question is, do you want it to log him out of all of the queues or just specific queues? So usually it would be log them out of all of the queues, but there are some queues that they don't want to automatically log people out. So you could selectively choose which queues you want them to log out. Now, of course, if we're going to send emails to managers and to the employee, we need to put in some email credentials so that this application can automatically send emails. And then there's license and about information. So that's basically how this guy works. It just watches for agents that are supposed to be logged in taking calls. And if they don't answer consecutive calls, they'll get logged out. All right. Auto self-ID. Let's take a look at that one. Now, this is one of the easiest, most straightforward tools we have. Auto self-ID, what it does is it looks for your self-identification message that each extension needs to create when they log into their extension or use their extension for the first time. Basically, without an auto self-ID, you are not included in the company directory. And if you have a very large organization with a lot of transitory employees, making sure that all these people are included in that company directory can be quite a pain in the posterior. Lots of emails. Hey, Joe, you forgot to create your self ID, so you're not showing up in the company directory. Would you please do that for me? That's a lot of hassle. So let's make sure that we just do it automatically, and then people don't have to worry about it. You create a new user in 3CX, Auto Self ID is going to see, hey, there's a new user. It's going to go and check to see if they've got a self ID created for them. Basically, it just says what your name is typically what people record for their self ID. And if there's one missing, then it goes ahead and automatically creates that. This makes sure you could, for example, choose to not have anybody record their self-identification message. And in that scenario, then when somebody goes to the company directory and the company directory says for Matthew Orr, press 1. When it says Matthew Orr, it's always in the same voice. So you have a consistent voice all the way through your company directory. All right, so that's what this tool is all about. Let's go and take a look at what's required. So what we use is Amazon Polly for the voice. So if you've ever used an Alexa or Echo Dot, these the voices that you use in those tools are the same voices that we use. So it's not a horrible a robotic voice. This is really good speech that a lot of people aren't even going to recognize as it not being a human that recorded the message. It's really, really nice. And interestingly enough, I can only guess that Amazon has a huge library of names because for whatever reason, they've been really, really good at um, pronouncing people's names. It's really quite surprising. And so you can go in here and set your culture. So if your 3CX phone system's in Spanish, choose the Spanish culture and then choose a Spanish voice. And it'll just go in there and every night it'll look for any new users and create that auto self ID, and then they're automatically included in the company directory. So that's auto self ID. This is perhaps one of the more important tools that we need to cover. This is really something that's important. If you're making telephone calls to outside parties that you're not currently doing business with, you better make sure they're not on the national do not call list. All right, so how many telephone numbers can the system handle? Well, we've got one customer in Germany that has over 40 million telephone calls. Well, how does this work? How does this application work? Basically, what this tool does is it looks at the telephone number that's being dialed, and there's a few milliseconds of time between when the user says, okay, dial this number, and the time that it actually starts ringing at the other end. There's some milliseconds in there. And so what we've done is we take these 40 million telephone numbers and we put them into an in-memory list, which means that we can search that list really, really quickly. And if we find the telephone number that they dialed in the list, then we drop the call. And when we drop the call, we then send an email to the manager and to the employee saying, you made a telephone call to a number that's on the national do not call list. All right, so this tool can protect your organization from significant fines and legal action. It's really a big deal. But we also allow you to selectively bypass certain employees. So you can set extensions that are allowed to bypass it. You can also use this as either a blacklist or a whitelist. So you can turn this up on its head. I don't remember the circumstances under which the customer did this, but they had a scenario where they said that you can only call people in this list. And if you try to call somebody that's not in this list, it'll get blocked. So you can use do not call for a whitelist or for a blacklist. All right, so let's take a look at this application. So again, we're going to log in with our 3CX extension and voicemail pin as soon as it wakes up. There we go. And I should mention with all of these tools, when I log in, it looks at what my permissions are in 3CX. So in this case, if I'm not a manager, I can't log into this application and make changes. It's only managers and system admins that can get access to this tool. So if you're not, it's going to come back and tell you a message, you're not authorized to access this application. So we are looking in 3CX for what your permissions are to control what menu options display on these tools. All right, so the first step in setting up Do Not Call is to import the list of telephone numbers. And this is really pathetically simple. You just browse to the CSV file containing the telephone numbers. And then I will say get fields here. And what it'll do is it'll read that CSV file into memory, and it'll look at the first row to get the column headings. And then it will display those column headings in this list box here on the right. And then you just map the fields from the CSV file to the appropriate field in the Do Not Call database using this arrow here. Once you've got them mapped together, then you just press the import button and it'll add all the numbers here. So you see I've got a couple in here just so that you can see. Well, what if there's a telephone number that I want to be able to bypass? You can just come in here and you can whitelist certain extensions that are available to access that given telephone number, right? So again, millions of telephone numbers. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't point out one important fact. And this is specific to the United States. Curiously, the United States government has not decided to make this list of telephone numbers a central database. These Do Not Call lists are administered by each individual state. Further, they charge for those telephone numbers. So I wish that I could just give you a button that you push and it goes and grabs all of the telephone numbers and puts them in the list. But unfortunately, it's about $1,500 last time I checked to get all of the different states Do Not Call lists. So there is some cost above our software to get all of the telephone numbers from the Do Not Call list. The nice thing is that if you import telephone numbers again, it's going to see those that you've already imported them. But there's a couple of other fields here that I should point out. One is the registration date, so that's just the date that the number was created or imported. But another is an expiration date. So if you import a list, you know it's good for a year, you're going to set an expiration date. If the next year comes around and you import the list and that number isn't on the list anymore, we've got an expiration date. We can remove that telephone number from the Do Not Call list, and then you can call them again because they're not on the Do Not Call list anymore. And of course, a description would just be information. So this would be typically a person's name or a business name or something like that. So basically, that's what that's all about. Again, like the other applications, you have to specify who's going to be notified. So these are a list of extensions, and you can just notify who's going to get notifications when somebody dials a Do Not Call number. There's reports here real quickly. I guess there's a report, and it's basically a list of extensions, who the agent was, what number they dialed, and the date and time. So if somebody's consistently trying to call numbers that are on the Do Not Call list, you now know. You can also see if somebody dials something on the Do Not Call list and somebody complains that you're calling, you can go, no, look, I can see you were blocked. We tried to call you that day and it didn't happen because it's right here. All right, so that's the Do Not Call application. Okay, Queue Notifier. Oh, this is another really good one. Right now in 3CX, you can set SLAs on a queue. And when your SLA is breached, you send notifications out to a select group of people. I don't know about you, but there have been times in my career where I've gotten 400 emails a day. So what do? I turn the notification sound off on my phone because otherwise it'd just be beeping every couple of seconds, driving me nuts. So sending an email is one way of notifying people that your SLA is being breached. But perhaps not the only way or even the best way to notify people. So that's what this guy does, is it warns staff, that could be managers, it could be everyone, it could be specific people who need to know when a queue has exceeded the thresholds that you've set. We can play a chime, and that might be useful if the announcement is going out over overhead paging system and you don't want your customers to know what the beep is for. You just need to hear beep, beep, beep. And that kind of lets staff know, uh-oh, I better go look at the queue, better log into the queue, forgot to log in after lunch, whatever. So we can play a chime. It can do a text-to-speech message. For example, a message might be something like, you have 15 callers in the queue. The longest hold time is 7 minutes and 45 seconds. So it can use text-to-speech to give you very discrete, specific information. Or you can upload pre-recorded messages. Well, why would you want to do that? Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a warehouse and you have a parts counter, and all of your staff are running around in the warehouse picking orders, and there's nobody there at the parts counter, and so the phones are ringing because somebody's gone into the queue and they're waiting there. Be great if, as soon as that call hits the queue, if you set the notification SLA to 1 second, have it page over overhead paging. You have a caller waiting in the queue. Now somebody knows, oh, I better run back and answer that phone, right? Let's see, what else? Yeah, so I mentioned that you can set warnings to be based on the number of callers that are in the queue, or the longest hold time, or a combination of them both. Each queue can have its own thresholds. So you may only want 1 or 2 people waiting in the sales queue, but because technical support takes time and you might have more calls coming into technical support or whatever, you might want to set the number of people that can be waiting in the queue, or the length of time that they've been waiting in the queue, to be a little bit longer. So you get to set this specifically by queue. All right, so let's go take a look at that one real quick. So again, web application, log in with your 3CX extension number and voicemail PIN. We check what your permissions are, and based on your permissions in 3CX, that'll impact whether you can log in at all, and if you can, what rights you have while you're in there. Okay. So here's an example of a queue, and when the thresholds are exceeded, I'm going to call this extension. Now, this extension could be a paging ring group. It could be an overhead a paging system. It could be an individual extension. Our application doesn't care. It's going to call that telephone number and it's going to play whatever audio you set up to play. If I wanted to use text to speech to define what the message is going to be, I can type in anything I want here. Again, it'll use Amazon Polly to generate a really nice audio for it. If I want to hear what it sounds like, I can press this button here. By the way, this icon only shows up after you press save. When I press save, it's going to look at the text, it's going to create the audio file, and then it's going to represent that audio file with this icon here so that I can play it. And then I just grabbed a recording because I didn't have a proper pre-recorded message that I wanted to play. Although I suppose that would work, is that you could just do that. So the idea here is that if you wanted to use text to speech, then you put text to speech in. If you want to play a pre-recorded message, then you supply a pre-recorded audio file. If you wanted to auto-generate the text based on 5 callers in the queue, longest hold time in 15 minutes and 30 seconds, then you don't put values in any of these fields. All right, so what's this for? This is intercom. So as you probably know in 3CX, if you want to call an extension and force it to auto answer, there is a dial code that you would pre-pin to the telephone number so that it will force that phone to auto answer so that you can play the message through the speakers. So if you wanted to do that, you would check this checkbox. And then how often do I want to play this message? So, people get busy. I heard the notification. I know that the queue's getting backed up, but 3-4 minutes have gone by and I've kind of been so preoccupied with the phone number that I was on that I forgot that there's still people waiting in the queue. So I can play that announcement again. So right now I've got it set at once a minute. It'll play it. And you don't want to make it too short because it takes a little while for it to say, for the customer service queue, you have 5 callers waiting in the queue. The longest hold time is 5 minutes and 35 seconds. Well, if you set the frequency that it's going to play that announcement to 5 seconds, they're going to start stacking up on top of each other and playing continuously. So you want to set this up with enough time to play the desired message, give them a little breathing room to go over there and log into the queue and take care of the call, and then play the message again. So that's what this is all about. So what's the maximum wait time? And by the way, if you hover over these guys, it will give you a little tooltip that gives you a little more information about what these fields mean. So if I go to max wait time, this is measured in seconds. So if I want it to be that I can't have somebody waiting in the sales queue for more than a minute, then I would set this to 60 seconds. And remember, I told you, I guess you can fill all of these fields and then you specify which one of them you want to actually use. So you can use the chime, you can use the one where we generate the text to speech, or we can use the one where you specified the text to speech, or you can use the uploaded one. So you choose which one of the notification types that you want. So this is max wait time, and this is max calls to queue. So again, if you were that parts counter guys and you wanted it to ring right away, I'd set this to 1 second and I'd set it to max calls 1. And then I would probably use the pre-recorded message that said, hey, you got a telephone call waiting in the parts counter queue, like that. All right, this is where you would upload your pre-recorded WAV files. Anything important in settings? I don't remember. Let's go and look in settings and see. This is where you would specify the paging dial code. This is just setting permissions, so we don't really need to talk about the rest of those. So that's Queue Notifier. As you noticed, you have a list of all of your queues, and you can specify which queues to monitor. You can specify different thresholds for each of those queues and different ways of notifying people. So maybe if it's in the call center, you don't want that to be overheard by people that you're talking to on the phone, so you might want to use beeps. But if you're in the warehouse, you might want it, because customers aren't there, you might want it to play the detailed message of how many callers, which queue, and how long they've been waiting, that kind of stuff. So what is the purpose of a recording beep? As I mentioned, I'm in England right now, and in the UK, they have regulatory requirements that say if you are recording a telephone call, the person whose call is being recorded has to be notified that the call has been being recorded, and it has to be a specific wave file, a specific tone, and a specific frequency. And this is for all telephone calls. You have to play this beep. That capability is not in 3CX at all, period. So in theory, anybody in the UK should not be using 3CX if they're recording their calls. They basically have to turn off recording telephone calls if they're in the UK, unless you have our tool, because this is the only way you can do this. So it notifies both the agent and the person that's participating in the call that the call's being recorded. It does fulfill those regulatory requirements. And that's kind of all this does. So this application is ultra simple. Let me take a look at that one real quick. Recording beep. Again, this is one, it just has a couple settings. You set it once and that's the end of it. You don't have to worry about it ever again. What is the extension number that's going to be used to play the beep? So you associate that beep file with an IVR, and what we're doing is we're barging into that telephone call with the IVR extension. The IVR extension plays its beep and then drops out of the call. And so we're just scheduling, we're just monitoring the telephone calls, barging into the telephone call, playing the beep, and then barging, dropping back out again. So you specify the group because you might not need to do this on all of them. You specify, do I want to play beeps for inbound calls or just outbound calls or queue calls? Do I only want to play it once? And in this scenario, because remember, we're associating a prompt with an IVR, you could record a long regulatory message and have it play that message once during the telephone call and then never again. So just so you're aware, we're recording this telephone call for quality and training purposes, that kind of message, right? So you would specify how frequently you want it to play. If you select once, then obviously it's only going to play the first time and frequency doesn't apply. But if you want it to play over and over and over again, you would specify how frequently. 15 seconds is the regulatory requirement in the UK. And do you want to delay a little bit before you start playing those beats? So give us a chance to say, hello, my name's Matthew. You've reached the technical support queue at VoIPTools. And then maybe a minute later, start playing the beeps. I actually don't know if there's a regulatory requirement in the UK for when that beep starts, but I assume that you 3CX implementers do. So that's really it. You set it up once and you are basically done. You can set it up for specific groups, or each group can have its own setting. That's how this goes. So you just select the group and then it will have its own set of settings. All right, so that is recording beep, and that is everything that we were going to talk about today. So I do want to thank you for your time. As I'm showing you here, these are some of the tools that we reviewed today in this webinar. I really want to thank you for giving us a portion of your time today. If you have any questions that do pop up in your brain later, here's some ways that you can contact us. Email sales@VoIPTools, or come to us live chat. We have staff manning the queues, the live chats 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you can call us, you can email us, you can live chat with us at any time. So if you come up with questions later, feel free to reach out with us.
Also, I think it'd be good to let people know that you get all of these tools as part of our subscription. Not only these tools, but literally all of our tools for 3CX, and there are a lot of them. So if you haven't seen them, go to our website, VoIPTools.com, and go look at all of our products.
Yeah, you make a good point, Adam. And in fact, our website is only a very small subset of the tools that we have available. For example, I think on our website we have two um, wallboards listed on our website. We actually have about 10 different wallboards to choose from, and they're not all on our website. And we're always building custom solutions, constantly building custom solutions for other partners. And when you purchase our tools, not only do you get our commercial tools, but you also get access to all of those custom developed applications that we've done for others. So I'll point out that pretty much all the tools we went through today started out their lives as custom tools for a specific customer. And then after getting the same request over and over and over again, we kind of said, well, I guess there's enough demand for this tool that we should make it publicly available on our website and include that in our suite of tools. So 30 plus commercial tools, plus probably another 30, 40 custom developed tools. And then if we just don't have something that we've already built for you that meets your needs, let us know. And we can look at what it would take to build the tool that you need. So with that, guys, I'm going to say thank you for your time. You guys have been troopers hanging in there with us today. So I do appreciate it. And look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.